So this video comes to you today from the big island of Hawaii, on the east side. Technically, the area is called Puna, and this would be in the Ka'au district. I decided to buy a house here. I'm actually from this island and from the east side. I was born and raised in Hilo and was living over on Oahu for several years. The real estate, homes, condos, everything over there was completely out of my reach financially. There's just no way I could afford it or even be approved for any type of loan to buy anything. And that's pretty much including like a small studio condo. So started looking over on the Big Island and looked at a ton of houses. Even looked at some properties, and this was about a little over a year ago, maybe almost a year and a half ago. Looked at a bunch of properties, nothing seemed right, and then we found this property, and it does have a home and back. It is located in Hawaiian Paradise Park, and it's probably worth a good bit more now than when I bought it, just because the real estate market over here is on fire. It's actually at the end of a dead-end street. We have state forest backing our property. These are huge albizia trees. They look beautiful, but they're actually really bad because if there's a storm, they are known to break and fall. They grow sometimes, I think, up to 200 feet tall. These are really tall. We also have some of them on our property. There's a bunch of them. And it's been definitely quite the adventure. We really like the property. We like that it wasn't completely cleared and that there are a lot of trees. If you listen, you can hear all of the birds chirping. I accidentally got cut off by a phone call, but you can hear the beautiful birds chirping. It's really peaceful. There is somebody doing some yard work, but it's in the distance. I can barely even hear it. It's pretty beautiful here. As you can see, there's a ton of greenery. There are these kind of rock walls that somebody had built. And furthermore, there is a rock wall that just spans the entire side of the property. It's sort of hard to see, but it spans the whole part of the back property. My dad, who's a realtor, thinks that they might be some old ancient Hawaiian rock walls. Oh, there's a little bird, an eggshell that a bird must have hatched out of. But this wall just spans the property. It's pretty overgrown, so a lot of it you can't see, but it's pretty neat. You can see there where there's the remnants of a huge, must be albizia tree that fell. It actually broke part of the wall. There's a small tree that actually fell recently from the state forest. And I would say that has been one of the biggest things I wasn't anticipating. I'm born and raised on this island. Never owned a home before buying this home. And a lot of the properties in this area are actually completely cleared. So a bulldozer will come in, completely flatten it. Like this area looks like the beginnings of it maybe had been possibly cleared at some time, but a lot of people just completely clear their entire properties, leave it flat, put gravel and stone on top of it, so you won't have many trees. Some people will go in after and replant the kind of trees that they want. And we did look at a lot of homes like that. They seemed pretty boring. The properties, not beautiful at all. And we just wanted something with kind of some privacy. We do have pretty nice privacy here. We have vacant properties around us. We do have some neighbors, but because our property is so filled with so many trees, we don't really see the neighbors, and that's nice. But something I was not anticipating was all of the trees, and all of the trees that end up falling. So here, this part of the island, on Big Island, a lot of areas have like telephone poles, and the electricity poles. The electricity actually is a line that connects over to the house. You can't really see our house, but it's an electric line, and it's above ground. This entire area before was just covered. I mean, you see a lot of trees now, but there were trees falling on this electric line. We had several trees falling on it, and the electric company said they actually wouldn't even help us with them, and that we had to clear the line. So that was a huge project, was just cutting some of the trees. And most of the trees were just weed trees. They were not anything special. You know, any tree is special in my book, or that's how I felt before. But there are a lot of trees that just grow like weeds, and they're very weak and they fall. The albizia trees are one of them. I'm going to show you another tree. See this tree? It's kind of crooked and resting up against another tree. That's a cecropia tree. Those are actually really bad. There's been several huge ones that have fallen onto our property, and very disruptive, very much of a hassle to have them cleared after they fall. There are some other ones there as well. I apologize, I got cut off again. And here are some palm trees that I assume somebody planted who originally owned this property. Over here, we actually there are a bunch of weed trees, but there are also some avocado trees. And we actually had no idea we had avocado trees for our first probably 4 or 5 months here. This area was just completely overgrown. As you can see now, there's some ground to walk on. We made a path, but before this was completely overgrown. So we had no idea that avocado trees even existed. We have cleared out some area. We are gonna do more. Still haven't had any avocados on the trees, except there's one back there that does actually have a few avocados. And I definitely want to do something to help improve the health of the avocado trees. If anyone with any experience with avocado trees has any advice to offer me, I more than welcome it. It's definitely a work in progress here. So in some ways, if you are considering buying property, or either building a house, or you want to buy an existing house, if you don't have your lot cleared and you have a bunch of trees on it, you're going to be dealing with issues like trees falling, a lot of yard maintenance that's needed either by you or hiring somebody, or a combination of both. Many areas in HPP have a lot of albizia trees. I kind of showed you these earlier, but we have some huge ones that actually need to be cut, most likely by a professional arborist, because they are leaning over and right above the power line right there. It'd be very dangerous if something fell on it, but we have had several cut already. There's a stump of one of them. That one was probably 150 feet tall. There's a really tall one there that's on the neighboring parcel of land. There's a huge one that's probably partly on our lands. So these are definitely considerations. Somebody kind of looking from the mainland might think, wow, those trees are beautiful. I'm excited to have those on my property, but you are going to have to address them at some point because they aren't good. They're not good trees. Another consideration is you're going to have wild pigs. This area we had gotten cleared and worked on clearing and flattening out so I could actually come with my John Deere mower and just mow this. But wild pigs came and they've been tearing it up. We've had issues with wild pigs pretty much our entire time here. They actually will seem to disappear for like a few weeks and we think, oh, maybe they're gone. Well, we don't really think they're gone, but they seem to be gone for a while and then they'll be back. And they just come and dig. They really like digging up sticks and roots, and they cause a ton of destruction. We had a bunch of tea leaf plants. They're gone now, but the pigs essentially took them all out. They're kind of like a nice ornamental plant that a lot of people plant here in Hawaii. So those are all gone now. I think if you have a garden, that is definitely something to consider. I don't really have an active garden now. I definitely want to get back into gardening. And when I was gardening, I had raised tables, so pigs weren't really able to get to that. But I've heard of people's gardens completely being taken out by the wild boar. There are people that do hunt the wild boar, and you can, people will set out traps and try to catch them. But it's a battle you'll never fully win because there is so much raw land and forest on this area of the Big Island, and they're just running rampant and multiplying. So this is kind of a fun little path that we got on our property. It was not a path before. This was completely overgrown. We left some of these bushes, these are actually a weed. I did make a video about these last year. It's called Coster's Curse. And we wanted to keep some of these because they actually produce these berries. See if I can get that a little bit clearer. They produce these berries that you can actually eat, and the taste of them does kind of remind one of a blueberry. And I was like putting them in pancakes. But they are a weed and they will take over. But we have this nice little path that we made. There's a lot of considerations. I think that people think that they're going to move to the Big Island, especially east side, and it's going to be different than it is. Another huge problem that we've experienced, and I'll see if I can find an example of them because they are everywhere, are the fire ants. And I was born and raised here. I lived over, oh, there's some butterflies. Just a couple butterflies just flying around. So you definitely get your taste of nature here, but back to what I was saying. I'm born and raised here. Moved away in 2013 and lived over on Oahu for several years, and we didn't have fire ants. And I'd heard some people mentioning about the fire ants, and I didn't really think it was a big deal. I just kind of thought, oh, big deal. I've experienced ants and fire ants in the past. It hasn't been that much of a big deal, but these are really bad. They're small. When we first moved to our property, I would literally walk under a tree and somehow the fire ants would get into my clothing because the fire ants do live in the trees. And I would get bit. I would get totally bit up. So it actually made working in the yard, oh, there's the butterflies again. It made working in the yard a total bummer. And I'm pretty allergic to the fire ant bites. So it was not pleasant at all. We've been treating them our entire time here. They're finally getting better, but they're still around. And it's definitely something that you do need to consider as something you should be aware of. I think a lot of people think, I'll just, buy a property, I'll camp out on it while I build, but you're probably going to get bit up by fire ants. It is a beautiful day today. We're seeing lots of sun. But this is not the norm over here necessarily. We get a ton of rain. And this last year, it seemed like from January up until about a month ago, it rained almost every single day. And it's not like just a quick shower and you can carry on for the rest of your day. It just rains and rains and rains and rains. And you're kind of just, staying indoors. Anytime you come outside, you're going to get wet. A lot of issues with mold. We had to buy a bunch of dehumidifiers and run those constantly. We were constantly cleaning up molds inside of our house. It seemed like every few weeks. One of our vehicles also completely molded on the inside. So that's another consideration that somebody is going to want to, be aware of. It's not this, perfect dry climate. It's definitely not dry on this side of the island at all. It's going to be very wet, very tropical. And you're going to have to be cleaning up a lot of mold. If you do have mold allergies, it may not be the best place for you because it is almost impossible to avoid mold of some kind. Just walking up my driveway now, and there are a ton, this is really pretty, just a ton of different gingers. And this isn't the type of ginger that you eat, they're ornamental ginger, but really pretty. Definitely like a beautiful property. There's a rock border that somebody built, and we recently cleared so you can actually see the rock border. Before, this was completely overgrown. You can see a bunch of the trees are just overtaken by vines. That's another normal thing. We also had to have an area on our property where we dispose of all the different palm fronds and yard waste. So this is kind of like our little tree graveyard. It's on its way to kind of turning into soil, but if you don't have your lot cleared and it's not all rock and you have plants growing on it and it's more kind of raw jungle, you're going to have somewhere like this on your property. I would say for the most part, most of the plants that are growing on the property that are not plants that somebody else planted are invasive species. There are not many, sadly, not many native plants left that have made it. There's this kind of grass, I believe it's called Guinea Grass. It just literally takes over. You can see kind of taken over a good portion of our property there. It grows so fast and is another bad weed. But all in all, you know, the property is very beautiful. I still personally prefer to have a yard that's very lush, beautiful, where you do have trees, versus one of those cleared properties that has no personality, that's completely flat. But it is a lot of work. I would think for the time that I spend working on my property, as well as others spend on the property, that I would have like a fully functioning farm. I'd have goats, I'd be making goat cheese, I'd have chickens, I'd be having a full garden and growing all my own food. And I think something that people need to be aware of is that there's a lot of maintenance just with a normal yard. We have an acre here. There is a ton of maintenance that just goes into keeping the yard from just turning into an overgrown jungle that takes over. Our property probably looks like an overgrown jungle to some, but having it just like this requires a ton of maintenance. So before you can even get into things like homesteading, growing food, having chickens who produce eggs, you know, other kind of livestock, things like that, you're going to want to take into consideration that your property is going to need some attention first and ongoing maintenance to keep it from literally taking over. I will definitely be making more videos like this. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. This was kind of one that I just put together. I just talked. I didn't have any talking points. I didn't script it. So let me know in the comments below if this is useful, if this is interesting, if this is something you'd like to see more of. And I would love to have you viewing my next videos. Thank you so much. Aloha and mahalo.